The message came at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. No subject, no text, just an image. Nathan Reed stared at the screen, the edges of the photo burning into his eyes. It had been taken from a distance, across a restaurant patio, maybe from a parked car. But it was clear enough. Claire. And Caleb, leaning close over a table, her hand on his smile crooked and familiar. Not work smiles. Not client laughs. This was different. Nathan didn't move, didn't breathe, just tapped the phone off and set it face down on his desk. He didn't know who sent it. The number wasn't saved. No clues. Just silence. But the message was unmistakable. It wasn't the first time Caleb Monroe crossed a line. Charming, magnetic, always the loudest voice in the room. He had joined Brightside Studio 3 years ago, brought in by Claire herself. He'll help us scale, she had said. We need someone like him. And for a while, it worked. The agency grew. Clients poured in. Awards followed. Caleb knew how to sell the dream, and Claire knew how to make it shine. Nathan stayed behind the scenes, crafting the strategy, holding the foundation together. They made a good team. Or so he thought. Nathan stood from his chair and walked to the tall windows of his office. The city spread out beneath him, Savannah, full of sunlight and stories. People walking, laughing, sipping coffee. Life moving, as if nothing had just broken. But something had. He didn't call Claire. He didn't confront Caleb. He didn't send the photo to anyone. He just stood there, watching the world pretend everything was fine. Then he returned to his desk, opened his drawer, pulled out a plain black notebook. The kind he used when building campaigns, mapping brand stories, reverse engineering human behavior. This time, he would use it for something else. He wrote a single sentence on the first page. If they think I won't notice, they don't know me at all. That night, Claire came home late. Her heels clicked lightly through the entryway, her voice carrying ahead of her. Hey, babe, she called, like everything was normal. Like her day had been full of nothing but pitches and planning and polite dinners. Nathan was in the kitchen, stirring soup on the stove. He glanced at the clock. 9:42. Claire slipped her bag off her shoulder, poured herself a glass of wine, and leaned against the counter. Smells amazing, she said. He smiled gently. Thought I'd cook tonight. Big day, she replied. Caleb and I met with that brand from Charleston. Went great. Nathan nodded slowly, pretending to listen, letting her words float past him like background noise. She didn't know. Not yet. And that ignorance was power. She talked while they ate, about schedules, the upcoming gala, a podcast idea. Nathan smiled when expected. Asked the right questions. He was calm. Measured. Exactly the man she expected him to be. But behind his eyes, gears turned. He watched how she sipped her wine, how she tucked her hair, how she avoided too much eye contact. Her performance was almost flawless. Almost. That night, while she slept soundly beside him, Nathan lay awake staring at the ceiling. The shadows on the walls seemed sharper. The silence heavier. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was calculating. By morning, Nathan had a list. He wasn't sure when his mind had started drafting it. Maybe between sips of cold coffee, maybe sometime between midnight and dawn. But it was there now. Crisp. Focused. Task by task. He didn't need proof. The photo had been enough. What mattered now wasn't if Claire and Caleb were hiding something. What mattered was how far they were willing to go, and how much he was willing to let them think he hadn't noticed. He stepped into the Brightside office just after 8, earlier than usual. The front desk was still dark, the studio quiet except for the distant hum of HVAC. The perfect kind of silence, the kind where plans were born. Nathan went straight to the server room. Not to spy. Not yet. Just to change a few permissions. Subtle things, document access, approval rights, client routing on the back end. Adjustments no one would question unless they knew what they were looking for. By 9:15, Claire arrived, breezing in with her usual energy, phone to her ear, coffee in one hand, laughter in her voice. She smiled at him across the open office like nothing had changed. And in her mind, nothing had. She still believed she was ahead. By 10 o'clock, Caleb showed up. Nathan watched from his glass-walled office as Claire walked straight to him, whispered something in his ear. Caleb chuckled, pulled a mock-shocked expression, then disappeared into the creative suite. Nathan didn't look away. He didn't hate Caleb. He didn't even envy him. What he felt was colder, quieter, the realization that the man he had once considered a friend had misread the room. Caleb had mistaken calm for weakness. And now, Nathan would let him walk deeper into the illusion. At noon, Nathan had lunch with Diane, Brightside's lead financial controller. Officially, it was a check-in about upcoming campaign budgets. Unofficially, it was about groundwork. Let's flag any payments above $15,000, he said casually. Just until Q3 projections level out. Diane frowned. Everything okay? Nathan smiled. Just being proactive. By the end of the day, internal reporting thresholds were reconfigured. Claire wouldn't notice. She rarely dug past the surface. Caleb might, but if he did, he'd assume it was another one of Nathan's boring finance side sweeps. Let them assume. That night, at home, Claire made pasta and talked about influencer contracts. She wore his sweatshirt, kissed his neck when she passed, curled up beside him on the couch like nothing had changed. Nathan held her hand and studied her smile. It was soft, familiar, even convincing. But Nathan had worked in branding long enough to know a campaign when he saw one. Claire wasn't coming home to him. She was performing the version of herself he still expected to see. And like any good marketer, Nathan decided to let the campaign play out, long enough to watch it collapse under its own weight. He didn't check her phone, didn't ask questions. He let her talk, let her keep the story going. Every sentence was a little gift, every detail another thread to follow. By the end of the week, he had what he needed. Meetings Claire scheduled without CCing him. Late lunches that didn't line up with anyone's calendar. Transfer requests from Caleb to external vendors Nathan had never approved. The pattern was forming. They weren't just cheating. They were preparing to break away. Nathan had seen it before in startups and brands that tried to pivot without saying the word. The signs were always the same. Tighter circles, secret invoices, energy that buzzed just a little too loud in one corner of the room. But the thing about betrayal, Nathan thought, is that it always moves fast and feels invisible until it's already too late. Unless you're already watching. And he was. That Saturday, while Claire said she was headed to a photo shoot that ran late, Nathan stayed in his home office. Not to sulk. Not to doubt. To build. He opened a new file. Phase 1. Separation. Legal firewalls. Banking redirects. Cloud asset backups. Internal log audits. Every system that could be split, mirrored, or decoupled, he noted it. Because Brightside Studio wasn't just a company. It was an architecture. And Claire and Caleb had no idea how deeply the foundation ran. By Sunday night, the pieces were in motion. And Nathan? He played his part. Monday morning arrived like any other: emails, coffee, and a brief team huddle to kick off the week. But beneath the surface, the air inside Brightside Studio felt just a little heavier. Nathan stepped into the conference room 5 minutes early. He always did. Claire came in just as the digital clock blinked to 9 o'clock, followed by Caleb and a few department heads. Her eyes briefly met Nathan's. She smiled. He smiled back. No tension. No confrontation. Just timing. Big week, Claire said brightly. We're presenting the Rylemont concept to their board on Thursday. Creative team, make sure assets are ready for mock-ups. Nathan nodded like everything was business as usual. But behind his calm expression, he was already 5 moves ahead. He had spent the weekend creating quiet backups of Brightside's branding files, account credentials, and license agreements stored on encrypted drives, locked behind new credentials Claire didn't have access to. The public face of the agency remained unchanged, but the skeleton was shifting. That afternoon, Nathan set a meeting with Alan Griggs, a contract attorney he had worked with years ago. Nothing suspicious, just an email titled Consult, Potential Restructuring Options. Alan replied within the hour. By Tuesday, Nathan was back in his element. Calm, focused, deliberate. He adjusted access rights in the project management system, rerouted billing communications to a new inbox, and created a secondary vendor registration list. These were not panic moves. These were puzzle pieces laid carefully, deliberately. Brightside had always been Claire's stage. Now, it was becoming Nathan's machine. That evening, Claire stayed out late again, some influencer dinner, in Midtown, all very curated and glamorous. She sent him a photo at 8:40 p.m., her holding a glass of wine, cheeks flushed, surrounded by smiling faces he didn't recognize. Nathan replied with a thumbs-up emoji, then turned his phone face down and continued reading the legal documents Alan had sent over. Wednesday morning, he launched Phase 2. He submitted a request to the company's accounting software for administrator credential updates. The change was subtle, just a forwarding email and alternate approval threshold. No alerts went out. No one noticed. He also submitted a request to formally audit Brightside's spending over the past 12 months. Compliance cleanup, he told the finance team. We've grown faster than expected. I just want to make sure nothing slips through. No one argued. Nathan had always been the steady one. The detail guy. The one who cleaned up the messes when projects fell apart. Now, those perceptions were his weapons. Caleb, on the other hand, had started to shift. He was still loud in meetings, still too confident, but his focus was scattered. Nathan noticed him check his phone more often, glance out windows, leave rooms early. There was a crack forming uncertainty behind the swagger. Nathan didn't confront it. He fed it. At lunch, he passed Caleb in the hallway and said, "We might have to rethink how we manage client portfolios. Too much overlap lately. We'll talk next week." "Sure," Caleb said, a beat too quickly. Nathan smiled. Just enough to leave him wondering. That night, Claire was home early. She made tacos, played music, even poured Nathan a drink. She laughed when he mentioned how long the week had felt. It was almost convincing. Almost. They watched a movie together. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And when she kissed him goodnight, there was warmth in it, just enough to make someone believe things were fine. But Nathan wasn't someone anymore. He was a mirror. And what he saw in her eyes wasn't love. It was guilt, barely disguised as routine. By Friday, the first ripple hit. One of Brightside's mid-tier clients suddenly canceled an upcoming campaign. No warning. Just a polite email. "We've decided to explore a different direction." Claire read it twice, then forwarded it to Nathan with a shrug emoji. Nathan replied, "Let's talk Monday." He didn't follow up. He already knew why they'd left. He'd spoken to them himself 2 weeks ago, casual, off the record, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. They hadn't just canceled. They had repositioned. And they weren't the last. By Monday, whispers had begun. Nothing dramatic, just small things. A vendor asking twice to confirm a billing contact. A creative lead wondering why Caleb hadn't responded to feedback. An assistant noticing Claire's calendar had a few too many off-site brainstorms, with no clear notes attached. Nathan didn't intervene. He let it all circulate. Whispers, after all, were the beginning of erosion. Not just of trust, but of momentum. And when you're running a creative agency, momentum is everything. At 11 a.m., he called a one-on-one meeting with the company's operations director. Officially, it was about reviewing growth strategy. In reality, it was Nathan testing something more subtle: loyalty. "How do you feel the team's functioning lately?" he asked, voice calm. "I steady." She paused. "We're busy. People seem stretched. A little unfocused." "Why do you think that is?" "I'm not sure," she said. "Leadership's been a bit disjointed. Some decisions feel scattered." Nathan nodded. No accusations. No emotion. Just observation. "Let me know if anything feels off. I want to get ahead of problems before they form," he said. And just like that, he planted his own seed. That evening, he stayed late in the office, not because he had to, but because it allowed the rumor to take shape. Nathan's the one fixing things. He walked past desks slowly, stopped to check in, praised a junior designer's mock-up, asked a copywriter about her dog. These weren't casual gestures. They were groundwork. The next morning, he submitted a restructuring proposal to the board. It didn't mention Caleb or Claire by name. It simply recommended realigning client management under a more centralized framework, with Nathan at the helm. No pushback. Why would there be? He had data, charts, declines in deliverable punctuality, lapses in client reporting, growing inconsistencies in the content pipeline. No one connected the dots to Claire or Caleb. Nathan made sure of that. The following Thursday, Nathan held an all-staff breakfast meeting, something Claire usually hosted. But this time, she was out with a press shoot, and Caleb was in transit. Nathan stood in front of the team and talked about clarity, direction, and purpose. He thanked everyone for their work, reassured them, smiled when appropriate, even joked once or twice. And when someone asked whether the agency was pivoting, he simply said, "We're focusing." That word traveled fast. Pivoting sounded chaotic. Focusing sounded smart. Later that day, Nathan finalized the transfer of Brightside's most valuable proprietary platform, a campaign tracking tool Claire had spearheaded, into a new corporate entity he had quietly formed under a different name. The ownership trail was legal, clean, and invisible unless you knew where to look. Claire had approved the paperwork 2 weeks prior. She hadn't even read it. Nathan didn't feel satisfaction. He felt motion. That night, Claire came home quiet. She didn't mention the breakfast meeting, didn't ask about his day, just changed into pajamas and curled up with her laptop. At one point, Nathan asked, "You okay?" She looked at him, startled, like she hadn't expected him to ask. "Just tired." He nodded. Me too. He watched her type. Her fingers moved faster when she thought he wasn't looking. Probably Caleb. But it didn't matter now. The trap wasn't closing. It was already closed. And the two of them were still pretending they had room to move. By the end of the week, 2 clients had requested direct communication with Nathan only, no middlemen, no creative teams. One said they felt more secure with fewer filters. Another hinted they didn't trust the account handling process anymore. Claire didn't seem concerned. She was focused on a new partnership proposal from a lifestyle brand in Miami, something Caleb had set up, and that, supposedly, would take Brightside national. Nathan let her chase it. Let her plan. Let her believe she was scaling. Because by then, Nathan already knew something she didn't. There would be no expansion. There would be no Miami. By the time she'd realized that, there would be no Brightside at all. Just paper. And silence. Claire was still chasing momentum. She hosted back-to-back Zoom calls from the sunroom, wearing her trademark blazer and bright lipstick, laughing into the camera as if the business was thriving. She sent out pitch decks with bold headlines, glossy mock-ups, and promises she couldn't see were already unraveling. Nathan let her have the spotlight. The stage lights were still on, but the theater was emptying. Meanwhile, Caleb had become erratic. He canceled meetings last minute, missed a pitch entirely, and once showed up to a team sync flustered and 15 minutes late. When someone asked if he was okay, he snapped, "I'm just busy." Nathan, however, had never looked calmer. He was always at his desk, always composed. He stayed late but never looked tired. He answered every email, anticipated every hiccup, solved every issue before it bloomed into fire. The contrast was becoming visible. And perception, Nathan knew, always preceded reality. By midweek, the financial controller, Diane, came to Nathan with a spreadsheet. "There's something weird in Q1 vendor flow," she said. "Some of the invoices are duplicative. Others are routed through shell vendors I've never heard of." Nathan leaned in. "Who approved them?" She hesitated. "Claire." "And Caleb." He didn't flinch. "Forward me everything." Quietly. By that evening, he had full visibility into a pattern of shady routing. Nothing illegal, not quite, but definitely not clean. It was enough. Enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to question intent. The next day, Nathan submitted a formal request for an internal audit framed around ensuring future investment readiness. He knew how to make those words sound exciting. Strategic. Responsible. The board approved it unanimously. Claire smiled when she heard. "That's why I love you. You see the numbers." Nathan smiled back. She didn't realize those numbers were already rearranging to leave her behind. That night, Nathan took a long walk through their neighborhood. The magnolia trees were blooming early, casting shadows on the sidewalk. He passed a group of teenagers skating, a couple walking a golden retriever, and a house with music floating from its porch. The world outside still moved like it always had, but Nathan felt like he had already left it. When he returned, Claire was on the phone in their bedroom, speaking in a voice low and intimate. She paused when he stepped inside, then quickly said, "I'll call you back," and hung up. "Work call," she offered. Nathan nodded, expression unreadable. "Of course." The next morning, Diane sent another file, cleaned, annotated, and quietly watermarked. It was the beginning of a case. Nathan forwarded it to Alan, the attorney. No explanation. Just, "Let's prepare." Friday came with rain, and with it, the Miami brand, Claire's Big Hope, formally withdrew their interest. "Creative misalignment," the email said. Nathan read it and closed the tab. He didn't need to fake surprise. Claire did that for both of them. She sat across the table, staring at the screen, murmuring, "I really thought they were in." Nathan reached for his coffee. "Sometimes they aren't." She didn't look up. "We needed this one." Nathan stood, kissed the top of her head. "We'll figure it out." But he already had. By Sunday, Claire started asking questions. "Did you change something in the contract system?" she asked over breakfast. "I can't see some of the new drafts." "I think we updated permissions during the audit," Nathan replied smoothly. "It's probably just a toggle." "Huh?" she said, brows slightly knit. Later that day, she asked if he wanted to plan a weekend away, just the two of us. Nathan smiled. "I think we should wait a few weeks. Till the audit's done." She nodded, and her smile held for a moment too long. She was trying. Or pretending to. But either way, she was late. By the time someone realizes the roof is leaking, the mold has already spread through the walls. And Nathan? He was already somewhere else entirely. Not geographically. Not yet. But structurally. In ownership. In control. He was building a version of Brightside that would leave no room for Claire or Caleb, only space for quiet, deliberate freedom. And it was almost ready. The audit reports began arriving in pieces, quiet PDFs sent directly to Nathan's encrypted inbox. No alerts, no CCs, just numbers, charts, discrepancies, patterns. And Nathan was very good with patterns. The vendor overpayments weren't accidental. The licensing redundancies weren't oversights. Someone, most likely Caleb, had been siphoning value, disguising movement under vague labels, and consulting fees. Claire had signed off on almost every one of them. Not because she was complicit, Nathan thought. Because she wasn't paying attention. And now, the time for attention had passed. He didn't bring it up. Didn't even hint. He let Claire continue pitching new initiatives, hosting strategy calls, and booking overconfident dinners with investors who were already backing away. By Wednesday, another client walked. Nathan pretended to be surprised, but Claire handled it. Just friction, she told the team. Growing pains. But the team wasn't buying it anymore. Tension crackled in the hallways. Meetings felt shorter, updates more cautious. People had started to hedge their words, waiting to see which direction the tide would turn. Nathan used the moment to remove Caleb from one of their top accounts. Quietly. No announcement. Just a reassignment due to client preference. Caleb noticed. The next morning, he knocked on Nathan's office door, unusually early. Got a minute? Nathan looked up from his laptop. Sure. Caleb stepped in, closed the door behind him. Did you pull me off, Halcyon? Nathan didn't blink. They asked for a change. Caleb scoffed. Since when do you cave to one client's mood swings? Nathan folded his hands. Since retention became a priority. A tense beat passed. Caleb nodded slowly, but the silence said more than he did. He turned and walked out. Nathan watched him go, knowing it wouldn't be the last conversation. That afternoon, Nathan finalized the internal transfer of Brightside's client database, contacts, history, activity logs, into a protected server owned by his new entity. All legal, all clean. The studio's most valuable and tangible asset had just quietly changed hands. Claire wouldn't find out unless she went digging. And she wouldn't dig until it was far too late. That evening, at home, Claire tried to rekindle something. She cooked dinner, lit candles, poured his favorite wine. She even asked him about his childhood, something she hadn't done in years. Nathan answered politely, smiled when it fit, but inside, he felt nothing. No warmth, no pull, just strategy. She kissed him after dinner, softly. For a moment, she lingered, waiting, maybe, for him to pull her close. To return to something. But Nathan just kissed her back once and stepped away. I'm tired, he said. Claire nodded, eyes unreadable. They went to bed in silence. By Friday, another senior employee resigned, this time without notice. Just a terse email and an empty desk. Claire took it personally. She didn't even say goodbye, she muttered in disbelief. She probably didn't want to explain, Nathan replied, not looking up. Claire bit her lip. Are we losing control? Nathan finally met her eyes. We never had it. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? He smiled gently. We've been chasing too much. Too fast. He said it like a business partner, not like a husband. That night, Nathan returned to his notebook. Phase 3. Exit. Everything was ready. Assets transferred. Contracts restructured. IP preserved. The parts worth saving had been saved. What remained was the shell Claire and Caleb had built around appearances. And it was beginning to crack. Nathan didn't need to push. Just wait. By the time it all collapsed, he'd already be gone. It started with the power flickering. Then the internet cut out. At first, everyone at Brightside assumed it was a utility glitch, weather, maybe, or another short in the grid. But when the office manager called the provider, the answer was different. Non-payment. Claire tried to laugh it off. That can't be right. We just updated billing last month. But Nathan was already at his desk, reading the email she hadn't seen yet. Final notice. Payment overdue. Services suspended. Account flagged. It was the first public crack. By lunchtime, whispers turned to conversation. 2 junior creatives had started packing up their things, just in case. Another was on a call with a recruiter in the hallway. The Brightside Slack channel, once filled with casual gifs and brainstorm energy, had gone silent. Claire called an emergency meeting in the studio's atrium. She spoke with passion, certainty, promises. This is just turbulence, she said. We're not going anywhere. but her voice trembled at the edges. Caleb wasn't even there. He hadn't shown up since Tuesday. Nathan stood beside Claire during the meeting, nodding at the right moments, maintaining the image. He didn't undermine her. He didn't need to. She was unraveling on her own. After the meeting, Nathan quietly moved the final licensing agreements, design copyrights, campaign language, and visual assets into the legal entity he controlled. The paperwork was airtight. Claire had signed most of it months ago. He had built an exit. All that was left now was the exit itself. That evening, as the rain came down hard against the office windows, Claire found Nathan standing in the empty conference room. "Do you think we're going to lose this?" she asked. Nathan looked at her. He saw the stress in her shoulders, the cracks in her makeup, the flicker of fear behind her tired eyes. "I think we already did," he said softly. Claire stared at him, then looked away. "So what do we do?" Nathan considered the question, then answered with quiet precision. "We let it fall." The next morning, the administrator quit. She didn't send a goodbye message, just left her key card on the desk and walked out. Others followed over the next 2 days. One by one, designers, strategists, copywriters, gone. No fights, no drama, just absence. Claire tried to contact Caleb. He didn't respond. When she called his apartment, the line went to voicemail. She emailed him, texted. No answer. His office still looked lived in, but the laptop was missing. So was his jacket. On Wednesday, Claire stepped into Nathan's office. "I need to talk to you," she said. Nathan didn't look up. "I know." She paused. Caleb's disappeared. Nathan closed his laptop. Met her gaze. "I figured he might." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Did you know?" "I knew what kind of man he was," Nathan said. "You knew too." Her face crumpled, just a little. "I didn't think it would come to this." Nathan leaned back. "It already did." She sat, slowly. Her hands trembled in her lap. "I thought we were building something real," she whispered. Nathan didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. A few minutes passed in silence before he slid a thick envelope across the desk. "What's this?" Claire asked. "Documents," he said. "You'll want to read them carefully." She opened the flap and scanned the first page. Her face went pale. "Wait, these are dissolution papers." Nathan nodded. "The company's structure won't survive another quarter. I've already removed what could be salvaged." Claire's lips parted, but no sound came. He continued, calm and direct. "You'll still have access to some of the secondary assets. The rest was too exposed." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You planned this," she said. Nathan nodded once. "I did." She took a long breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you weren't listening," he said. "Not for a long time." And with that, he stood. He left the room, left her sitting there, still holding the remnants of the business they thought they controlled. Claire didn't go home that night. Nathan noticed, but didn't ask. The house was quiet, like it had been rehearsing for this moment. He ate alone, washed the dishes, and sat on the back porch as the night air cooled the brick beneath his feet. Somewhere in the city, Claire was probably calling lawyers. Or Caleb. But neither could undo what had already been set in motion. By Friday, Brightside Studio was barely functioning. Emails went unanswered. Clients grew cold. Invoices stacked up with no one to process them. The front desk remained unstaffed. The phones rang and rang into the void. Claire returned mid-morning, dressed in business casual armor and false calm. Her eyes were puffy, her mouth set in a straight line. She didn't speak to anyone. She went straight to her office and closed the door. Nathan didn't follow. Instead, he printed and signed the final dissolution papers. At noon, he held a short meeting with the remaining 3 employees, 2 designers, and a project lead. He told them the truth, plainly and respectfully. "This chapter is closing," he said. "You'll receive letters today confirming your contracts are ending. But you'll also find a severance bonus enclosed." There were no protests, just tired nods and quiet goodbyes. They hadn't stayed out of loyalty. They had stayed out of inertia. Now, even that had run dry. That evening, Claire came to him again. He was in the kitchen, sipping tea, folding the last of their shared mail. "I got your email," she said. Nathan looked up. "Okay." She held her phone in her hand like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "So that's it. It's really over." He set his mug down. "It's been over for a while." She leaned against the wall, exhausted. "You were supposed to be the calm one." "I was," he replied. "That's how I was able to finish this without shouting." Claire's eyes welled again. "I didn't mean to ruin everything." "You didn't ruin it alone," Nathan said evenly. But you helped. She laughed bitterly, tears falling now. And Caleb? Is he just gone? Nathan nodded once. He left when it stopped being about him. Claire looked away. I thought I was smarter than this. You were, Nathan said. You just stopped being careful. For a long while, there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Claire's breath catching in her chest. Then, softly, she said, So what happens now? Nathan looked at her. This version of Claire he had once loved, trusted, fought for. She looked smaller now. Not weak. Just done. I'm leaving, he said. She blinked. Leaving the house. Everything. Claire wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her cardigan. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet. She didn't ask to come with him. She already knew the answer. Nathan reached into a drawer and pulled out a second envelope. This one was thinner. Divorce papers, he said gently. Already signed. You'll find it's clean. Fair. Claire took it without protest. She didn't even look inside. She only asked, Did I ever have a chance to stop this? Nathan met her eyes. You did, but not anymore. And just like that, the conversation ended. Claire went upstairs. Nathan packed a single suitcase. That night, he didn't sleep in their bed. He rested on the couch, watching the shadows drift across the ceiling, listening to the clock tick quietly toward morning. At dawn, he left. He didn't slam the door. He didn't leave a note. Just a final message in Claire's inbox. All debts cleared. Move on. And with that, he was gone. Nathan Reed crossed the state line just after noon. No ceremony. No rush. Just the quiet satisfaction of watching familiar road signs disappear in his rearview mirror. He drove with the windows down, the warm wind threading through his jacket, the radio murmuring some nameless acoustic song. His destination was a small town outside Asheville. Trees, hills, soft mornings. He had signed the lease a month ago, under a new business name, for a space no one else knew about. It wasn't a fresh start. It was a clean exit. The apartment was modest. White walls, high windows, hardwood floors. Nathan unpacked slowly, just the essentials. A few books. His laptop. A framed photo of a cabin trail from years back, where he'd once hiked alone and found peace in the solitude. He placed it by the window. It was the only decoration he allowed himself. In the days that followed, he fell into rhythm. Early walks under maple trees. Coffee from a small cafe where no one asked questions. Work in the afternoons. Consulting quietly, rebuilding carefully, no logos, no names. Just structure. Just value. He didn't search for news about Brightside Studio. He didn't check Claire's socials. Or Caleb's, if they still existed. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what would have happened. The company was gone, legally dissolved, assets moved, brand identity shelved. The name still existed in some search engines and outdated email signatures, but Brightside had already faded from memory. A story no one wanted to tell twice. One afternoon, a letter arrived, handwritten and signed. Claire. The handwriting was unmistakable. Nathan opened it, read it once. Apologies. Regret. Memories. A hint at starting over. He folded the paper neatly and placed it in a drawer with the others. He didn't feel anger or longing, just distance. Weeks passed, then months. The silence became a friend. He no longer checked the clock at night. No longer felt the weight of unfinished conversations. The days were long, the nights quiet. And in that quiet, Nathan found something he hadn't expected. Clarity, not victory. He didn't win anything. Not revenge. He hadn't destroyed anyone. He had simply stepped aside and let gravity do the rest. One morning, while walking through a local park, he passed a construction site, clean steel beams rising over fresh concrete. It reminded him of Brightside. Not the mess at the end, but the very beginning. The part no one ever celebrated. The foundation. He paused a moment, watching the workers move with purpose. Then he kept walking. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Because the past wasn't something he carried now. It was something he'd outgrown.